actually need to film this because I'm already late with putting this up, but there is some gaming going on in the room while I film, and I hope it's not too annoying, but annoying is it's the kind of second name of a guy, so... Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, The Inked Reader. I am wrapping up the 10 books I've read in the month of October today. Sorry for the delay, I was just out of town for a week or so, and so this has come this month a bit later than usual, but I had overall a good reading month, which usually happens when I read only horror. I can't think of like a month where I read only horror and I had a terrible time, or that I disliked very much like a horror book. It's very rare. I can think actually of an abomination I read last year, which was Firefly. God, that was absolutely horrifying. But apart from that, usually when I read horror, especially during Halloween season, when I read only horror, I usually tend to have a good time. And yeah, so we don't have anything that's atrocious. Enjoyment wise, I put this in a list of enjoyment, so from my least enjoyable read to the most enjoyable read. Quality wise, I tried to stick to putting like a quality list at the end of what I thought maybe quality wise this list should look like, in my own opinion, of course, as always. But yeah, so quality wise probably a couple weren't that great, but enjoyment wise a success, I would say, as a month. Okay, let's start at number 10. So at number 10 I have to put Frankenstein Prodigal Son by Dean Koontz. It's difficult not to spoil anything with this, so all I'm gonna say is that this is a loose retelling of Frankenstein, where you have the kind of core elements of Frankenstein, but they are thrown in modern times and with a murder mystery that needs to be solved. So there is a killer on the loose that kills women and collects their body parts. We don't know why at the beginning, although you do follow the killer's perspective, so you kind of follow different perspectives, and then you do have Dr. Frankenstein, you do have Frankenstein monster, and so on. So you kind of have like a remodernized thriller, I would say more than horror, although there are a couple of gruesome scenes, retelling of Frankenstein. Objectively, I do not think that this plot was good. I think this book does not hold any literature value whatsoever. But I do like Koontz's writing style. It doesn't take much brain power in this case, like I've read this in a couple of days because it's a very quick read. Quite absurd on a lot of elements, and yet he throw in these characters which are admittedly one-dimensional. They're not particularly well crafted, but they just work over the kind of story that he's telling in here, and which is this kind of very gruesome but superficial thriller. It's a bit odd, and then in it he throws in nice quotes. So there are a couple of quotes here and there from his writing that I really enjoyed. So it's a weird combo with Dean Koontz. There is this character, Michael, who's one of the police officers, that had me like laughing out loud in a couple of occasions. He's constantly making jokes that are quite funny, but also they put a lot of lights in situations that are absolutely gruesome. So that's, I guess, my way of saying that the severity of the crimes that happen in these do not match the vibe of the book. I just accepted it, I guess. I just said, okay, this is a bit absurd, but Koontz also is very, very good at creating these villain characters which could only exist in fiction, because they are the quintessential essence of evilness. And there is just no redeeming characters then. They're not like morally grey, they're just pure evil. And there is a scene in the restaurant, I don't know if you've read this, you might know, but there is a scene in the restaurant where something happens and I was like, okay, I know Koontz, I know where you're going, you know, you're trying to shock me whether I already saw the next part coming. and I was wrong. And what he does with that scene made me queasy, made me like, oh god, okay, oh god. So I was again pleasantly surprised by Kuntz, because he managed to make me actually shiver at the idea of what was happening. So again, you might have like a very superficial odd thriller, and then he throws in a couple of scenes and we're like, whoa, okay, these are good horror scenes. So very much a mixed bag. Would I recommend these? Probably not. Definitely not if you are like, it's your first Kuntz book. Don't read these. Are so many other books to read instead. I know it's a series probably, so it continues on. If you've read these, do I continue on? Do I give up? Help. Okay. At number 9, I would put And Then She Fell. Now this I found on Scribd, and I would say it's a psychological thriller. Most of all, you follow the story of this woman. She recently had a baby. She's a Native American woman that she's married with an American man, and now they have a baby, and they transfer into this community that's prevalently white American people. And she's battling postnatal depression, and there is a lot of weird perceptions and weird things that she starts seeing, or she's been seeing actually for a while, but now they've got back, and because of the depression they actually increase and intensify. This is a 9th place, mostly because these type of thrillers are not my kind of thrillers. I don't particularly love psychological thrillers in this way. They just don't do it for me, and that's completely fine. However, I must recognize that the prose in this was excellent. I must recognize that the author's ability to really take us to the core of this character, the exploration of the core identity of this woman who's been taken out of her community and thrown in a community that she finds quite hostile toward her. Her experience of sexism, racism, having a baby, trying to do her best in the situation where she's in while battling trauma from her past and everything that comes with it, was very, very well portrayed. I think I really was in the mindset of this character. So to a certain degree, I really appreciated also the psychological thriller bit of things, because her inner dialogue, inner monologue was so well written. I particularly found touching the last 45 minutes of this story. I initially was like, oh, what's happening? Okay. And then when I caught on what was happening, because I was listening to this on audiobook while doing other stuff, I was profoundly touched by the last 45 minutes. So I don't know how much that would be translated into chapters, but I found the ending very, very powerful and profoundly moving. One thing that I thought long and hard if I want to share or not, but then we are kind of learning in my school to be congruent and to be able to reflect when we catch ourselves having a reaction to something, and be honest about the reaction without being trying to hide it, but also being open to discuss it with other people. So one thing, for example, I've noticed of this book, that in a couple of occasions here and there I've picked up, is that when the author speaks about white women, it's always with a negative connotation. White women, in a sense, could only do evil, or they always had like hidden purpose that was mean or vicious. And I found myself having a reaction to that, because I found myself feeling quite stereotyped, or where, you know, doesn't matter what white women were doing, it was wrong, it was racist, or it was whatever. And I don't know if that's what the author wanted to say or not, or if simply I had a reaction to something that's been completely misinterpreted by me, becoming quite defensive. It could completely be the case, but I think no one likes to be stereotyped, and I found myself like, oh, I'm not like that. Like, just because I am a white woman, then it means I need to be vicious and evil or jealous and having other purposes. I don't see myself in those behaviors. So being put under an umbrella of all white women are like this bothered me again, and I'm not saying that that's exactly what the author wanted to do, but I'm saying that's my reaction I had to that. And I know that people, Native American, have been discriminated for their culture and race for thousands of years. So many other cultures and genders and everything have experienced discrimination, racism are still experiencing that, and I don't want to take away anything from, you know, the fact that they are still experiencing that, and that what she put from her point of view in this book about her own, you know, the culture and the way she was treated by the people was absolutely valid. But I did recognize that, okay, if you're a white woman, you can't do good. Like, you have to be evil, you have to be racist. And I did not like that, because I don't see myself in that. No one likes to be stereotyped. Like when you are, because you belong to a race or a particular group, then no matter what you do, those are the preconception I have about you, and there is no in between, or there is no, you can't be good, basically. Why, rather than being, oh well, you, Daisy, you did something to me. You also happen to be in this category, but you did something to me, and therefore I judge you because of what you've done, not because of your category or because of, the group you belong to. So that's different than, stereotyping. Oh, Daisy, you are in this category, therefore you must be like this. Which is what I don't like, which is the sense of stereotype, like, because you belong to a group, therefore, you have to be in certain ways, just because you belong to that group. So yeah, basically, I had a reaction to that, which doesn't mean that that's what the author wanted to come across. It's something that happened a few times in the book, so it's not a massive part of the book, but I just want to be honest and saying that did rub me wrong a couple of times, because they're like, whoa, like, I didn't do anything, I would never do this thing, so why do I feel like you're putting me under this umbrella and stereotyping me? Take it or leave it, that's how I felt. But I don't know if it's a debut or not. If it is, stunning prose. I will check out more by the author, and if you like psychological thrillers or literature fiction, I think this would work very well. Next I got We Used to Live Here, which is something I've listened to on Everard, previously known as Script, and it's, I think, pretty recent thriller, and it's about this family. They move in this house with their 2 children, husband and wife and 2 children, and they kind of start unpacking the mystery behind the house. There is something that happened in the house, and they kind of try to put together these pieces of this mystery. I'm just gonna keep it like these vague. I guessed what was about to happen very early on, and so then I was right, and therefore that kind of took away a bit my enjoyment of the book overall. I do recognize that it was a very quick, fast-paced read that kept my attention throughout, and I do believe that this twist might work well for a lot of people. And I don't know, I got this thing where sometimes I feel like maybe, if you are new to thrillers, this is a good intro, because the twist is pretty clever. It works very well, I believe. So if you are maybe not so used to put together the pieces of a thriller, you might actually be quite shocked by this. And yeah, I thought the twist was clever. I just called it out just because I think I'm just used to read this story, so I'm used to unpack and put pieces together because I've been doing it for years and years and years. So didn't hold the element of surprise, but still overall I had a good time going through this and listened to this probably in a couple of days. Then I actually read an audiobook. No, Eva, that's so wrong on so many levels. I'll start again. Then I've read a Kindle ebook on my phone when I was going to my placement back and forth, and this is Burnt Offerings, and it's the story of his family moving only for the summer to this house that has been rented out for a few months, where the owner will just take a vacation. So they get it for a very good price, that for the mansion that the house is, it's almost unreasonably cheap. So they move in, but there is a catch. There is a catch with the house, don't want to spoil anything, and the story unravels from there. It is, it's a horror. I would say it's a very mild horror. And of course we got fireworks in the background because it's the 5th of, it's bonfire night in England, so apologies, but we're gonna hear fireworks in the background. Anyway, I was saying, was surprised by the writing style, because this was written in the 70s and the prose felt so modern. I was struggling to reconcile the date this was published with the prose, because it felt like it was written yesterday. So I found that very refreshing. I must say that the thing that somehow hold me back from really enjoying this book is how slow and overall quite uneventful this was. They described it to me as a torturingly slow paced book, and I kind of agree, but also the ending, which I really enjoyed, I thought that was quite effective, the ending was still quite uneventful. So despite me liking it and liking where he went with it, I thought it was atmospheric, I thought it fitted the story very well, it was still not an explosive ending. So you get through this slow paced story At times I almost disengaged a bit because nothing was really happening on page, but then you do not get a big ending. You get a fitting ending, appreciated a lot, but yeah, I am probably someone who enjoys horror to be more horrific. Or while this was very unsettling, I recognize it, and I think it will work so well for so many people. And I enjoyed the small things happen here and there. It just didn't pack a punch as other stories, other haunted house stories did. Kind of want to run this up, my kind of review of this book, saying that I do recognize that probably this book was highly influential for other authors that then after this book was published took some elements of inspiration from here to put in their stories, because I think I've read other stories that now that I look back at Burnt Offerings had some elements of it. So I wonder like how influential this was, and I have a suspicion that it was highly influential for the horror genre of the haunted house, which is one of my most beloved ones. So I'm grateful that this book was there. Home Before Dark. Speaking of haunted houses, you can see a trend in here. I tend to like those. This is Sager's take on the haunted house. These are the fireworks in the background.
6.5 hours later.
Sai quanto costano poi? Ma questa gente quanti soldi ha? E soprattutto non può spenderli da un'altra parte. So io.
Eventually.
So this is Sager, I don't know how you call it, take on the haunted house trope. This girl lived in a haunted house for 2 weeks when she was a child before her parents whisked her out one night after a tremendous event. After that night, she never goes back, but her father writes a bestseller about those 2 weeks in the house. And now her father has passed away, so she decides that she's gonna go back to the house and try to sell it. And the story goes from there. First of all, I lied. This was not my first Sager's book. I've read his Final Girl one. And then what it means is that I liked the plot quite enough. I don't think it's particularly special, but I did think that in a couple of places was particularly creepy. There were a couple of scenes that are like, oh, this is cool. Terrifying, but cool. I do not think that his prose does work for me very well though. I find his prose quite bland, and it makes a difference in that, because if you have 200 house stories but one is very well written, I will then kind of go back and read more about the author rather than you, because either you have a plot that's superior to others, which it doesn't do it. I don't think it doesn't have. I don't think it's a bad plot, but I don't think the plot is anything mind-blowing. Or you have very good writing, or a combination of both. And to me, this just means that because this is one of the most famous by him, and all the others have more mixed reviews, I'm like, if I don't love this one and the Final Girl one was just okay, do I want to keep reading him? Maybe yes, maybe no. So in all likelihood, I won't be spending any money on other books by him. I'm not sure if I'm gonna keep this or not. Maybe yes, but I might find them on Everard, library, whatever. Let's see what happens. I just know that for the moment this didn't turn up into like, oh, now I need to read all of his books. Although there's a part of me saying, okay, if this is so popular and you just find it okay, what if you read the ones that are not popular at all, that people did give mixed reviews to? Would those work more for you? Because that's how I work. I work the other way around, and it's not good. But ultimately, it's like, whatever, you just criticize this book, but you put it pretty high up. The scenes and the house, it wasn't bad at all. I did enjoy the core of the plot quite a lot, probably more than the other plots, just because it's more eventful. It's just when I look up, my expectations were not met. Then I will have to put the eyes are the best part. Now this is the stunning Evernight edition I've got in my hands, and let me tell you, thus far 4 out of 4, all successes pretty much. So Evernight, whoever's judging what books to put in your book boxes, retain them, do not let them go, because they're good at choosing books. Tangent. This is the story of Ji-won, and her father has just recently left Ji-won her sister and her mother, and her mother is reacting quite badly to the separation until she meets this American man that she gets kind of start a relationship with, and he starts hanging out around the house, and he is insufferable, though he has very juicy blue eyes. And Ji-won starts finding herself kind of fantasizing about his eyes and getting hungry. I'm just gonna leave it there. I mean, the picture tells a lot. This is deceptively longer than I thought it was. Like, I did not feel like this was a quick read. This was quite an intense read, and overall I did enjoy this quite a lot. I think it's an unraveling of Ji-won character. This character then, to begin with, we pretty much understand from the very beginning that, well, she's a bit of a shitty person, but the reasons why she has become this way, and are explained in the book, make sense, do not necessarily justify her actions, but they do take the edge out of it. So I really liked the introspection of Ji-won. I thought she was an interesting character. I liked how grief and anger is explored, and I also enjoyed that my fears of, oh, this is gonna be a psychological thriller, it's not gonna deliver in the end, it's one of those of, yeah, just in their head, whether it does not do that. It does deliver in the end, which I really, really appreciated. It's a weird one that worked well for me because it was a new story. It was a story that felt fresh. I do have a couple of critiques as well, which are fundamentally that nothing of the sort could ever happen, not with the science we have today and the, you know, the investigation techniques that we have today. It just would not be possible. And a couple of things were very convenient when and how they happened. So there is that. But overall, as I said, fresh read, entertaining. Another one that was good. I generally think this was a good book with a good plot. Not especially good, but good plot overall. But did not meet my expectations. Therefore, I thought this was going to be number 1, and instead it's number 4. It's The Ritual. The Ritual is by Adam Neville, who wrote No One Gets Out Alive, and I adore the horror book. The Ritual is about 4 guys that are approaching middle-aged. They are in their late 30s, I believe, and they decide to go to Scandinavia. Again, another, I believe, incoming, because I'm not 100% sure, but they decide to go this kind of walk camping trip in the middle of nowhere, just to have some time for themselves, reconnect. They used to be high school best friends, but they have kind of lost track of each other with the years, and so they just wanted to go on this retreat and try to, you know, to have an adventure and just have like a boys trip. It says here they should have gone to Vegas. I agree 100%, they should have gone to Vegas, because in these woods they become victims of a horrifying pagan god. This is written in the back. So I'm kind of preparing you for the general direction of this book. However, it's not the only direction this goes into. I noticed this with the other Neville's book I've read, which I've read just 2, but he kind of splits his stories in 2 parts, and those parts, although they are interconnected, the second part would never exist without part number 1, they feel quite distinguished, quite separate between the 2. And it's been the same with the other book, as I said, and I, as I did for the other book, preferred the first part overall to the second part. I found that his writing style, which blew my mind in No One Gets Out Alive, like the topics it covers, the depth it goes into, you know, the violence against women in that one, did not come through the depth of the writing, I mean, nearly enough with this. It was more superficial as a story. Even the friendships part, which he covered a bit, it didn't cover enough for me to be fully satisfied. I thought I'm sure he had more to say potentially on, you know, friendship and reconnecting and approaching the middle-aged phase of your life, and instead it does talk about it, but not to the degrees that I was expecting to, or not with the prose that I was used to in the other book. I don't know which one came out first. I think this one came out first, so he might have just grown as an author, which is completely normal to do. We grow. I mean, a lot of us try to, right? Some succeed. And the horror part, it was good. I enjoyed the horror part of it, the atmospheres they creates. I do believe that he had a bit of more, like, I struggled a bit more with actually his violent scenes, the action scenes if you want, because I did not understand what was going on. In a couple of instances I had to reread them 3 times to understand what was happening, who was getting ripped apart, or whether was the case. And that I found also odd, because I don't remember having the same issue in the other book by him. So writing violent scenes quite clearly so I can understand what's happening, it's a skill. I've realized this by reading horror, that you know, your prose will affect how impactful the scene is. And I think in here it wasn't as impactful as it could have been with a slightly more clear prose. And the ending I found quite abrupt and to a certain degree vague, and so I would have just loved to have a couple more chapters. Said that, I will read everything that this man put out, not because of the ritual, but because of No One Gets Out Alive. So I know he's got a lot of potential, and I did enjoy this overall. I gave it for 3.5 stars, something like this. Not a bad book at all, but not to the... I didn't like this nearly as much as I liked No One Gets Out Alive. Then I would have to put The Mist by Stephen King. This is a short one by him. He's known for actually writing thousands of pages, but I found this quite effective. Said that, I would have loved to have more. The Mist is the story of his father and son that they go to town one day to get some provisions, and a weird mist covers the town. So they found refuge in a supermarket, and whole hell breaks loose from there. I found this idea quite original, because what comes out of a mist, I could have not guessed. And I do like King's stories, I do like his writing, and I found these quite spooky, because I could really think about being in that situation. And I was like, what would I ever do apart from just screaming and pulling my hair out in that situation? I would be completely useless. And so the fact that I could really put myself in the shoes of this character and, you know, thinking about what if this happened for real, made it very effective. There is an interaction actually between the father, our main protagonist, and another character that pops up in the supermarket, which I found a bit yucky, and I was like, why? Took me out a bit of the story, but whatever. I do also think that I keep liking his old stuff more than the new stuff, but objectively I've not read enough to really make a sound judgment about if I really love only his old stuff compared to the newer ones. But yeah, a success. I think that this is so effective for a short novel. I read this in a night or two maybe, and it was just entertaining and fun and scary. And yes, I might watch the movie. Watchers. This is about this woman. She kind of survives by taking odd jobs, and one day she's given this odd job of delivering a parrot, if I remember correctly, to someone. So she's traveling with her car, and her car stops near these woods. She walks in the woods. Why? What's the together? Have you ever watched a horror movie? You just don't walk in the woods anyway. So she walks in the woods, and she gets to this sort of cabin, and turns out that she can't leave the cabin because there are things outside that will chase and murder her if she tries to do so. And there are some people that have been surviving in the cabin for a while that will teach her all about the Watchers. I did not expect to like this as much as I did, because I thought it was a very good mystery horror thriller, maybe just mystery horror book, and it creeped me out. The Watchers creeped me out. I was able again to put myself in the shoes of this character and say, this is a very shitty situation to find yourself in. What would I ever do in this situation? I would completely panic and again be useless and probably die in the first 15 minutes of the movie. I was also very curious of finding out what was happening. I think she kept the mystery up very well. It was ongoing, and when we do find answers, there are a lot of other questions that pop in the mind. I am glad that there is a sequel, because hopefully we will get some of those answers that we don't get from the first one. I also found it quite fast-paced, and I would have probably loved this more on if I had read a physical format rather than listening to it, because again I do other stuff while I listen to audiobooks, so in a couple of times I might find myself distracted or having to go back, rewind. Not ideal, but I know that physically I would have loved this more, so I will look for a copy potentially. I don't know if I'm gonna listen to the sequel or not yet, or get a physical copy. I also found that myself quite attached to the characters, like the way she creates these characters, which are not too many, and I think in this case works well because it's a small community, so you kind of, they connect through hardship, and I really felt like I cared about their well-being, which is a bad decision to do when you read a horror. But I did care about these characters, and therefore I was quite invested on, you know, what would happen to them. Really like the ending. I am though unsure about the movie, because I heard horrifying things about the movie rendition of this. So let me know if you watched the movie. Was it good? Would you suggest? And the number one, a book that I did not believe it would get to number one until now, when I compiled this list and realized that I can't keep thinking about this book, so it had to become number one. And I'm speaking about The Ruins by Scott Smith. And this is about this bunch of young people that are in Mexico for a holiday. They meet this guy whose brother goes missing, and so they decide to help him out and go in the jungle to try and find the brother that supposedly has gone on this kind of romantic getaway escape with a woman that she met, and they were headed in the jungle. So they go to the jungle, they come across this weird village where people do react very weirdly to their coming, and they kind of get stuck there on a hill. And this is just, yeah, I can't even say that all hell breaks loose, because it's a actually very terrifyingly quiet and yet absolutely gruesome horror story. It's my first environmental horror, I believe, I've ever read, and I did not know they could work. I, compared to The Watchers, where I said, you know, I particularly cared and cherished those characters, of those ones, I couldn't give a so seeing them going through these was not as traumatizing as it would have been, you know, from characters I particularly cherished, and yet somehow I can't stop thinking about what happened to these guys. And of all the horror books I've read this month, this is probably the least situation I want to be put in. So, and that's saying something compared to, you know, considering everything I've read, this is the last place I would want to be, because they felt trapped. By just reading this book, I felt trapped, and somehow this story really crept under my skin. See what I've done here? If you read this, you know what I mean. This really provoked in me the quintessential fear of there is absolutely nothing you can do. You can just literally just wait to die, and it's just absolutely horrifying. I need to stop saying absolutely, but it's just trying to convey how deep my feelings were about these. I did find a couple of the sexual scenes quite odd, considering where they were at. I'm just like, really? Right now? Do you realize what's happening? But also, the characters are quite stupid, to be fair. Like, a majority of them, they are, like, quite stupid. So I guess, I don't know how, you know, maybe it's not that far-fetched for them to do stupid stuff. So the sexual scenes, wasn't the biggest fan of it, just in a really couple of occasions, and I got a bit frustrated because we do not get answers. This is very much, I don't want to spoil, because I think it will spoil what I'm gonna say, so I'm gonna cross my fingers. Wait, but I'm saying this is a, like, you know, history repeats itself horror, but without answers. So that frustrated me. And yet I keep thinking about this. I can't stop thinking about this story, and so I know that it was actually very effective. I will read the other book by the author. It kept me glued to the pages. I just could not stop reading. I wanted to see this happening. I knew it was gonna happen, and it happened, and I wanted to read about how it would happen. And it's just one of those horror that it's particularly effective in its delivery. I don't think the writing in the prose is anything special, didn't put any quote or anything, but the plot and the way it develops, this kind of, you know, seeing things that you can't stop happening and just wanting to know how they will happen, kept me so engaged. So I know why it's famous now, and I agree, it is a very special horror story that I am very glad I've actually read. Guys, my battery's about to die. Let me know in the comments down below what was your best read of October. Let me know if you read any of those books, if you like them or not. If you're new, I would love for you to subscribe, stick around. I promise there are no fireworks in the background every time I film a video, just now and then. I'll see you next time. Take care. Ciao!